Chapter 1 Introduction. What you think, you become. What you feel, you attract. What you imagine, you create. Buddha. Finally, the last book you'll ever need when it comes to the law of attraction. It's right here in your hands. For the last 2 decades, I've made my way through this world, starting from rock bottom and working my way up to a place where I can actually be proud of myself. A place that I am happy to be. However, this book is not about my journey. It's about yours. What you hold in your hands is your complete guide to the law of attraction, a guide designed to help you live your best life. Have you ever wondered how to do that? Have you ever found yourself in a never-ending rut that you can never seem to pull yourself out of? Does it feel like life is holding you down by throwing one thing after another your way? Ever wondered about the best way to approach things when the going gets tough? Have you ever wanted to know how to put yourself on a path you can be proud of? To live a life you're content with? The answers to all these questions lie within the law of attraction. Some call it a methodology. Some call it a secret. However you want to refer to it, there's no doubt as you make your way through these pages, you're going to learn everything you need to know about taking control of your life. Perhaps for the first time. Now, to be clear, this is the last book you'll ever need to read when it comes to the law of attraction. You've probably read articles online or Rhonda Byrne's bestseller, and while they're great books, I found them impossibly more complex and spiritual than they needed to be. I loved them, but something was missing. At least for me and many other people I've spoken to about the subject. If you're new to the law of attraction, this is a guidebook full of actionable takeaways that will change your life. These pages contain years of personal research, experience, trial and error, and ups and downs. It's the definition of the law of attraction, what it stands for, how it works, and how you can use it to create and manifest the life you want. This book is designed to help you stop wasting your time reading other books, attending random seminars, chatting with therapists and life coaches. Instead, enabling you to invest your time in taking action. Everything I've learned over the last 2 decades in one place. I have never found a source of teaching that fully encapsulates how you can make the law of attraction work for you practically. So, I set out about writing my own, and here it is. Where it all began. To set the stage, here's my experience with the law of attraction. This is a short section to start things off, so you know who I am and where I came from. More importantly, you can experience how the law of attraction quite literally changed my life. Let's start at the beginning. About 15 years ago, I was in a rut, a low ebb, if you would. I was in my early 20s, living with an emotionally abusive partner, and our relationship was constantly teetering on the edge of breaking up. I was isolated from the world. I had few friends, or at least I didn't see them often. I was in a dead-end job, and to put it frankly, I hated myself. I'd go as far as saying despised. I remember looking in the mirror one day before leaving my dirty apartment and shaking my head at myself in the mirror. Aloud, I literally said, "What the F*** are you doing with yourself?" before moving on. I don't know why I said it or what part of me decided to say it, but it happened. That was the one question I seriously wanted to answer, but I never found the answer. I just hunkered down and I worked as hard as I could, but made no progress. I did that for years. A few years later, I had an epiphany of sorts. I had worked as a surveyor for 2 years, and the company I was working for was terrible. Lousy customer service, slow turnarounds, a malicious boss, a toxic workplace, the works. So, I decided this was the new chapter I had been waiting for. I set out to start my own company. I had to burn bridges to leave, but I wasn't bothered. This was my turning point. I was determined to make it work and give it my all, more motivated than I had been in as long as I could remember. However, as the first years passed, I found myself in the surreal position where it seemed like the harder I worked at bringing my business to life, the less money I seemed to make, and the more it seemed like it was failing. It didn't matter how much effort and time I put into things. My work wasn't generating any income. I was struggling to stay afloat. And so, after many months of trying everything to heal my situation that I could think of, I was at a loss, physically exhausted, sad and emotional, lethargic, and completely spent. Mortified, I had to ask friends and family for money. I had to work harder than I ever had before just to support myself. But I couldn't shake the feeling that it was all slipping through my fingers. I had plans, and I knew what I needed to do. I had ideas for marketing and being more efficient, and I started to think about growing a team and setting all the foundations I knew I needed. But plans are just that. Plans. They weren't my reality. Perhaps it was a case of trying at the wrong time in the wrong place. Eventually, I drew the line and accepted that the business had failed. I couldn't keep asking family and friends to keep me up and running. The guilt and the shame were too much, and I was dead broke and deeply ashamed. The negativity, sadness, and despair came crashing down on me, and it felt like things would never change. I was back in this loop and no better off than I had been years before. It all fell apart. I had to give up. There was no more fight left in me, and I no longer wanted to try. My dream had evaded me, and it was time to move on. I know it sounds a bit dramatic, but it's the truth. If you've ever been in a similar position, you know how consuming it can be. Unfortunately, as it tends to happen in situations like these, when it rains, it pours. You may have noticed that when bad things happen, they tend to be followed by an endless stream of other bad things. I'd given everything to make the business work, and I was left with nothing. I'd given up my home, car, money, and relationships. I was left with no more than a few personal belongings in a suitcase that I lugged around for an entire year. 25 years old and couch surfing at friends' apartments, never staying more than a few days out of guilt and fear that I was burdening someone with my presence. It sounds dramatic, but that's genuinely how I felt. This was my life, trapped in a cycle of making a decision and feeling that it backfired every time. I would work so hard to save enough money to pull myself up to a place I could be proud of. But just a few weeks later, I would somehow be overdrawn with loan payments looming over me. Of course, I had to do something. I was sick of this perpetual state of not knowing what I was doing. I was sick of not having any control over my life and seemingly wasting my hours just being pulled around by the currents of misfortune, thrown against the rocks every now and then. Out of sheer desperation, I turned to the internet. as one does. You see, I said to myself, even if I don't know where to start or what to do, it's got to be better than this. And so I started looking for answers. I needed something. Maybe we're all just the product of our environment, and maybe this was the problem. So I started thinking about changing my environment and doing things differently. I don't really know what I was thinking, but the first thing I did was go and sit in a local churchyard. I thought that if we're all just made of atoms and energy, perhaps there was some kind of positive vibration or energy emanating from such a place. After all, people have been doing that for years through prayer. I was at a loss. At least if I went there, I might be able to feel some kind of energy that would help me out of the situation I was in. If I was lucky, maybe God would enlighten me and show me the way. I figured that if sitting outside a churchyard was good enough for Einstein, it should be good enough for me. The only problem was that I couldn't really feel anything. A few sparrows were foraging for food on the ground, but that was about it. No spiritual awakening stirred beneath the surface. No epiphany moments. But then I started thinking about what else I could do to try and get myself out of the rut. I know I needed things, material things. I needed money. I needed a stable job. I needed to figure out what to do about my abusive relationship. And I certainly needed to work on my other relationships, whether that meant revitalizing old relationships or finding new ones. Perhaps most importantly, I needed the confidence and courage to step out into the world and make all these things happen. For the last few years, I've been trying to make things happen. I've been trying to make my dreams come true, and it had only left me worse off than when I started. My confidence and self-esteem was at an all-time low, and that needed to change. Hell, above all, I felt like I needed a drop of sanity or peace for once. But this raised very important questions. How could I bring all these things into my life? How could I attract them into my life? Thinking about it in the moment, it all felt like so much that it may as well have been labeled impossible. I got home later that evening and literally Googled how to attract stability. And lo and behold, I saw articles about the law of attraction. At this point in my life, the law of attraction was a concept I'd heard of before, but somehow had seemed to have forgotten about. I remember my mother had a copy of Rhonda Byrne's The Secret on the bookshelf in the lounge of my childhood home. My grandmother used to talk about the law of attraction when I was younger, too. She spent the first day of every new year creating vision boards to help her manifest her year, although I paid little attention to it at the time. I also remembered watching an online self-help seminar about the law of attraction. Interesting, I thought to myself. Very interesting. It was as though pieces of a puzzle were starting to form in my mind, pulling at old memories I didn't even know I had. With no other solutions in mind, I pursued it. I started by getting educated. At first, it made no sense at all. The idea that you could wish for something and simply get it seemed bizarre to me. But as I began to read more and learn about the law, I realized that it wasn't just a piece of crap people like talking about. It wasn't wishful thinking. The law of attraction legitimately had real-world applications. The proof was everywhere. And there are literally endless stories from people who have used the law of attraction to manifest their dream lives. For example, motivational speakers like Tony Robbins talk about the law of attraction and apply its concepts in different ways. with statistics showing that he's reached the likes of over 50 million people. Celebrities like Will Smith and Jim Carrey regularly talk about their experiences of manifesting their desires using the same concepts and techniques we'll explore throughout this book. Arnold Schwarzenegger is a popular example of someone who has used the law of attraction to achieve some powerful results. Known for being a gifted bodybuilder in his younger years, Arnold explained in plenty of interviews that he wanted to win the Mr. Universe title, and this was his dream during this stage of his life. As a result, he used to envision and visualize his success by walking around ongoing tournaments like he was the top dog and had already won the title. Arnold began his career at the age of 15 and ultimately went to win the Mr. Universe title at the age of 20, which is an incredibly fast accomplishment given the competitiveness of the industry. What's more, he went on to win it 6 more times. And even though it's long since he stopped competing, his bodybuilding career has left a lasting legacy, and he remains one of the most famous bodybuilders in history. There is even a U.S. bodybuilding competition named the Arnold Sports Festival, which is considered the second most important bodybuilding event in the world after Mr. Olympia. Schwarzenegger was very proactive when it came to using the law of attraction, and the results have been incredibly clear throughout his career as a bodybuilder, a famous Hollywood actor, and even his political career as the governor of the state of California. That's a lot of success for one man. But this is just one example of the many people who have used the law to beckon the universe to their side to manifest their dream life. Jay-Z, Oprah Winfrey, Lady Gaga, Will Smith, and Denzel Washington all apply the law of attraction in their own lives and have spoken about it publicly. Even renowned UFC fighter Conor McGregor applies these teachings. Quote, "If you can see it here in your head and you have enough courage to speak it, it will happen. I see these shots, I see these sequences, and I don't shy away from them. Often people believe in certain things, but they keep it to themselves. They don't put it out there. If you truly believe in it and become vocal with it, you are creating that law of attraction, and it will become reality." End quote. Conor McGregor, UFC 194. When you consider that law of attraction books like The Secret have sold over 35 million copies, and there are even references to the law of attraction in scriptures like the Bible, a text written over 3,000 years ago, it shows that this is something that has been a part of human culture for literally millenniums, and something worth looking into. Of course, I was skeptical, but at the same time, for many years, I had watched as certain friends and family members got what they wanted. They were succeeding in making their dreams come true. They would ask for big things during casual conversations: a better career, more money, a new house or car, and I would watch in awe as their lives gradually changed over time. As hard as they may have worked to make it happen, and believe me, they worked hard, without even knowing what it was that they were working towards, the things they wanted would eventually come into their lives. And I could never understand why I seemed to miss out. When I started out, I thought the law of attraction was just an illusion, a way for people who couldn't hack it in the real world to make themselves feel better, a way for people who didn't know what they were doing with their lives to try and steer themselves in a more productive direction. I felt that it was one of those things that really only worked on TV. And while some people were lucky enough to fall into the right combination of good luck, good timing, and good karma, a perfect storm, so to speak, the vast majority of us had little hope when it came to making things happen. I believed we were stuck with our lot in life. But then I eventually changed my mind. The law of attraction is not an illusion. It's a way for people to take control of their lives and steer it toward the things they want. The law of attraction does not mean that you sit back and you expect others to bring the things you want into your life. Instead, it means that if you know what you're doing, you can take control of your destiny and make things happen. What I found in my own journey is nothing short of incredible. How the law of attraction works. What is the law of attraction? How does it work? How can you apply the law of attraction to your own life? Let's start with the basics. The law of attraction. To get a basic understanding of what the law entails, let's start with the science. And believe me, there is a ton of science supporting this. Everything that exists in the universe has an energy vibration. Whether it's you, me, the building you're in, or the planet, they all have a vibration. This may sound a little complicated, especially if you're new to quantum physics, but the premise is really simple. Scientists have determined that everything vibrates, even the atoms that make up matter. This means that everything is constantly in motion, not just the Earth orbiting the Sun at 67,000 miles per hour. This is known as atomic vibration, which is scientifically defined as the periodic motion of the atoms of a molecule relative. Put simply, molecules and atoms will vibrate in relation to the molecules and atoms around them. Interestingly, these same building blocks respond to energy. For example, if you heat water, you're transferring thermal energy into the water. That doesn't just heat the water, but vibrates the atoms and electrons within the atoms. This is how it works. If you focus your attention on something, your mind picks up its energy and sends it out into the universe. You then attract similar frequencies of vibration. You think of something that creates electrical signals or energy that expand out and vibrate other atoms.